Hello and welcome to another amazing HTML and CSS tutorial. I made this landing page in Adobe XD and I wanted to do a tutorial on how to create this same landing page using HTML and CSS. Now here you can see two designs. They are basically the same designs with the difference being that the Our Story and the Reservation section on the left side has a dark background and on the right side has a light background. So the one that we'll be using for this tutorial is the one to the right with the light background. So just to give you a better preview of what we'll be creating. So this is what we'll be creating. So we have this header section here. It has a navigation bar here with the logo and the navigation. Has a heading here, a call to action button here, and it has a nice background. The next section we have is a section about our story, which has an image to the right and some text to the left. We also have the menu section that has the menu items and their prices to the left and the image to the right. It also has a call to action button here that says see the menu. We also have a reservation section that persons could use to book reservation. In a fully production application, you could create a backend to this that would probably store it in the database and send emails and that kind of stuff, notifications and that sort of stuff. Lastly, we have the footer section. The footer section can be built out a little bit more, put in like the address and contact information about the restaurant, but this is just basically what I have so far. I didn't bother to go ahead with it any further than this. So all we have here is just basically the logo and some social media links and maybe like a copyright information can go here. So this is what we'll be building, guys. So to start out creating this landing page, what we'll do is we create an empty folder in our workspace and then we'll create an index file. So we'll create index.html. We'll also create a folder that will host our CSS file. So we have a CSS folder and within that folder we'll create a main.css file. We also create a folder for our assets. And within our assets folder, we'll create another folder for our images. The images have already been extracted from Adobe XD, so I'll just go ahead and copy them into our images folder. And now we can move on to building out our index page. So we'll go over to our index page and we'll create the HTML structure. We'll change the title to Restaurant Landing Page. We'll also create a link to our CSS, which will be in our CSS folder and main.css. Next, we'll start to create our header section, which is this section here. We'll begin to work on this section. So we'll go header. And then we'll put a H1 for now that says header. And to preview this, we'll be using our Visual Studio Code live server extension. So if you look to the bottom of your Visual Studio Code, you'll see something that says go live. We'll click on that button and it will basically launch a live server, a live development server on your local machine. So here we see header, so we know that this is working now. So the next thing that we want to do is continue to build out our header section. So we'll go by creating a div that will hold our background. So that would be this background that you see here. We'll be using a div to contain this background image. All right. So we create a div with a class of background. We also will move on to create a nav with a class of main nav. And within this navigation tag, we'll create a div with a class of logo, and then we'll grab that logo. Alright, so that's in our assets folder, images, and the logo PNG. Give it a name, logo. Next, we'll create the various navigation links. So we'll create a div with a class called navlinks. And within this div, we'll create various anchor tags. So create one for home, the other for menu, the other for reservation, another for about us, and contact. Underneath our nav, we need to create this heading here. So we'll use a H1, and then we write dinner is better when we eat together. So as you can see here, we have two different fonts for this section. So what we need to do is we need to separate these. So I'll be separating them using a span tag. So we put a span tag here. So whenever we're doing the CSS, we can target these specifically. So put a span tag here, and then we'll separate it into new lines. Now let's take a look at that. Nice. The next thing we need to do is basically to add this button here that says see the menu. So we'll go underneath our H1 and create another anchor tag, and then we'll call this see the menu. All right. What we need to do now is to start to work on our styling. So we'll go to our main.css file, and then we'll start to style our page. The first thing we need to do is to add our Google fonts. So I'm using two fonts for this landing page. I'm using Ephesus, and I'm also using Poppins. So I pulled that from the Google font website. Another thing that I like to do is I like to set up variables for colors and stuff that will be reused. So we use the root pseudo element and set up our variables. So I want a variable for our primary color, so color primary, and the hexadecimal for that is DA8800. We'll have another one for our primary light, and that will be E79613. Then we have another one for our primary dark, and that will be hexadecimal AC4F00. We'll have one for white, for our white we'll be using the usual white color, and then we'll have one for gray. Alright, so what these does is it basically gives us the ability to change these colors in one place if if ever we need, you know, like a different variation of white. So maybe we don't want to use this pure white, then we can just come here and just make one change and it change everywhere that it is used on the entire website. Another thing that I like to do is basically just to reset the browser defaults, zero the margin and padding. So margin 0. Also set the padding to 0. Border none. Text decoration none. Box sizing border box. Alright. After that, I'll go to the HTML tag and set the overall font size. So font size 62.5%. Next thing, what we want to do now is to create the styles for our header section. So we'll go header, and then I'll just create end header just to contain the CSS for our header, right? So let's take a look at what we have now. Okay, so this is what everything looks like now. So let's go ahead and start to style it. So we'll select our header tag. So we'll go header. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 108 rem. We'll give it a line height, 8 rem. We'll set the display to flex. We'll also set the flex direction to column and align items center. Let's see what we have. Nice. So as you see, we're getting the basic structure of how we want the layout to be. So this is what we're aiming for, right? All right. Next thing we want to do is to add our background. So we have created this background, this div with a class of background for us to be able to add our background image to it. So let's go ahead and add our background. So we'll be using CSS to add the background. So let's select that background element. So the background, and let's begin to style it. So we want to give it an absolute position. So we'll say position absolute. And because we're setting this position to absolute, we have to set this one to relative, right? Then we'll give it a top of 0. We give it a left of 0. All right. Let's go ahead and also add in our background image. So we'll go background. We'll go URL. And the URL for our image would be in our assets folder. And we have, within our assets folder, we have the images, and we also have an image called hero image. Let's also set the width to 100% and the height to 100%. Nice. So as you can see, our background is now showing, but it is in front of our text. So we need to fix that. So in order to fix that, what we'll do is we'll use our Z index and give it a -1. I should bring it back 1. Nice. So we can now see our text showing through. All right. Let's also set a no repeat and center for our background image, and also give it a background size of cover. Now let us begin to style our H1 so we can see it more clearly. So we'll select our H1 in our header. So we'll say header H1, select our H1, and then we'll give it a width of 93.6 rem. We'll give it a color, and we use our variable for this, so we'll go var, and then we'll select our white color. We also need to set our font size, so we'll give our font size 14 rem. We'll align our text to center, text align center, set a margin top 23 rem, and a margin bottom of 5 rem. All right, let's see what's happening. Okay. So we also need to set our font family for our H1. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll just set a global one for all H1s. So H1, set our font family. And we'll use this Google font called Ephesus. And if that's not available, we'll default to cursive. Let's see how that looks. All right. Next, we'll add our border. That's this border here. This border here. So we'll give it a 5 pixel border, solid, and the color that we'll use, we'll just take it from our variable and we'll use our primary color for that one. And then we'll give it a padding of 6 rem. Nice. There's also this dark overlay that is within this container, so we just need to create this dark overlay here, and in order to create that dark overlay, we'll just give it a background. I'll use a RGBA background. All right, so it'll be 0, 0, 0, and then we'll give it an opacity of 0.6. Let's see how that looks. Nice. So the next thing we need to take care of is this we eat, when we eat. So as you can see, it's a different font and different size, and we had already gone and placed this in a span by itself. So let's target that span and style it accordingly. So we'll target our H1, and then we'll target the span within our H1. I will set its font size to 5.2 rem and the line height to 13 rem. Let's see how that looks. Nice. So the next thing we need to change is the font family. So for this font family, we're using Poppins. There we go. So the next thing we're going to style is our navigation. I will target our main nav. So that would be the class of main nav. Let's start with the logo. So we'll give the logo a width of 20 rem, a height of 100%. We'll align self to center, and we'll give it a padding top of 1 rem. So what we just styled is the logo container. So now let's style the logo image itself. So we'll do that by targeting main nav logo image. And for this, we'll just set the width to 100%. All right. Then let's move on to our nav links. So we'll go main nav and select our nav links. We'll set a max width of 90 rem, and I will target each anchor tag within our nav links. All right. So we'll give them a color, and give them a color of white. We'll give them a font size, 3 rems. Give them a margin, right? 2.5 rems. Nice. We also need to style our main navigation container that holds both the logo and the navigation links. Let me just split this right so I can have both of them, both the index and the CSS open at once. What we're going to style now is basically the main nav, which we should have done before, but it's never too late. So let's go ahead and style that. So we'll go main nav. We'll give this a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 16 rem, a background of RGBA, 0 for red, 0 for green, 0 for blue, and then we'll give it a opacity of 0.8. We also need to set the display to flex, justify content space between, align the items. I want to center them. I want to give them a padding of 0.4 rem. Let's see how that looks. Nice, 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 nice. All right, let's work on the hover for these navigation links. To work on the hover, we'll target the navigation link again. So we'll go main, nav links. I want to target the anchor tag when they're in a state of hover, right? And whenever I hover over them, we want to change the color to, let's use our primary color. Since they are white, we just change it to our primary color when we hover. Alright, let's see how that looks. Nice. Alright, we can do a little bit more if we wanted to, or we could just leave it at this. Keep it minimal. Yeah, let's leave it. Let's leave it here. don't want to spend too much time here. So the next thing that we need to work on now is our button, or call to action button. This one here that says see the menu, we need to style this one. So let's look at what we have for the HTML. So for the HTML, we need to give it a class of button, or btn, and then btn primary. And for these, we can add the style at the top here. So let's add a style for btn and a style for the class btn primary. Alright, so now for our button, let's give it a width of 35 rem. Let's give it a color, which would be for the text. So let's give it a color of, let's use a variable white. Let's also give it a font size of 3.2 rem. And let's see what that looks like. All right, here it is. We also want to set the text to uppercase and give it this background color here. So say text transform, set it to uppercase. Give it a font weight of bolder. Can use bold or bolder. I'll just go for bold for now. We'll give it a background color. I'll just put it above here. Use a variable primary. I think we should just put this one in our button primary. All right. Let's see what that looks like. We also need to center the text. Text align center. We can set the padding. For top and bottom, we can do 1.5 rem. And then 0. So let's use 1 rem and see how that looks. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Alright, we can also give this button a hover state. Let's play around with that a little bit. Let's do a, yeah. So let's select the button and give it a state of hover. And then for the hover, what we can do is we can play around with the border radius and give it like a, let's see, a 0.5 rem. Let's also give it a box shadow of 0 on the X, 0.5 on the Y. Let's give it a 0.5 for the spread, and let's give it a RGBA color of black with a opacity of 3. And we can also transform just to give it a little bit more effect on the hover, and let's move it in the Y direction. So let's translate it Y -1, so that will lift the button up, and let's see how that works. There you go. And to smooth out this transition, we can just give this a transition property for the border radius. Since we have animated that, give it 0.2 seconds, and also the transform property 0.2 seconds. So let's see how that looks. There you go. I think that's enough for the header section. I mean, we could go and get a little bit more fancy with it, but just to keep it simple, I think this is good enough, right? And it's pretty much close enough to what we have here. Maybe Not exact, but very close enough. The next section that we have to do would be our story section, so we can move on to that. So we'll create a section with a class of story, and within this section we'll create a div for the left side and also a div for the right side. Then within the left div we'll create another div with a class of image wrapper, and within that div we'll add the image. So the image is in assets, images, lady eating her, and then we'll put lady eating. We'll now go over to the right side. I'll create a H1, says discover our story. And we also create a paragraph. We'll use lorem to just put some placeholder text. So we'll do lorem 25. And we can add another paragraph. Do lorem 15, I guess. That works. And let's see what we have so far. So here, this is what we have. Nice. So let's go ahead and style this, right? This should be a H2, by the way. So now let's work on the styling for this. So we'll start out by styling the story section. So let's go and say our story. And our story. So we'll grab the story class. I will give it a width of 100%, a minimum height of 70 rem, we also want to display flex. Let's see what that looks like. Alright. Next thing we want to do, let's focus on styling the left side with the image to get it to look like this. So we have the image. It has somewhat of a dark overlay, or not necessarily overlay, but has more contrast. And it also has this inner border. So let's try and see if we can make that possible. So what we'll do is we'll start out by styling the left. Let's say story left. Give it a width. Let's grab the right side same time. So we'll go story right. I will give this a width 60%. Let's target also the image wrapper. So we'll go story and we want the image wrapper, which is a class. And we want to give this a width of, let's say, 40 rem. Now let's work on getting this inner border on the image. For this, what we will be using is we'll use the before selector. So we'll select the image wrapper and then we'll use the before selector. Before, set the content to empty. We'll set the width to 90%, so it will be 10% smaller than the image. And we'll also set the height to 90%. Give it a position of absolute. So we have to give this a position of relative. Then we want to set the top to 0, the left to 0, and we want to give it a border of 5 pixel solid, and then we use our variable primary color. Let's see how that looks. So as you can see, we have the border here. We just need to position it a little bit. So what we can do, we can give it a top margin and a left margin to position it better. So let's do that. So we'll give it a margin top of, let's try 4%. With a margin left of 4%. Nice. The next thing we need to work on is to give it this higher contrast. As you can see, this one has a lighter look. We could have done that in a photo editor like Photoshop, so we would not need to do it in CSS, but we could achieve the same effect using CSS. One way that we could do is, let's do it. Let's use the after selector and then put a translucent dark background over it, and then we can mix it just to show some additional CSS stuff. So let's do that. So I'll go and I'll use this selector. Let's copy it. Give it a after, AFTER. Let's give it a content of empty content. We'll give it a width of 100% because we'll need it to cover the entire image, and a height of 100%. Alright. We also need to give it a position of absolute. Top 0, left 0. And let's give it a background color. Background color of RGBA. Use this one with 3%. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so you can see it has a dark overlay. Additionally, what we can do now is to use a mix blend mode and overlay it so it interacts more with the image beneath. So in CSS there is a mix blend mode that we can use, and let's go overlay. Yeah, looks a little bit better. Also, there are some little bleeds on the edges here. To reduce those, what we can do is we can reduce this to probably like 99%, and the width the same, 99. Those are not showing so much. A cleaner way would be to use Photoshop or one of those image editing software to create that effect, but it can be achieved with CSS just the same. Alright, the next thing that we want to do is to style the, let's see, so we need this image to be centered more in the left side. So to achieve that, what we can do is we can set the, so we have display flex here, we can set another display flex here for the left side. justify content center, align the items center, and flex direction column. And then we get it to center a bit. Now let's go and start to work on our right hand side. So we already started the right hand side, setting the width to 60. Let's continue. So we'll go display flex, justify content center. We also want to align the items center, and we want the flex direction to be column. Nice. Now we need to size these paragraph here and also this H1. So let's go up to the top where we have our H1. Let's give this should be the H1 within our section, and we'll just create another one for the H1s within section as well. And for these, what we'll do is for the H1, we'll give it a font size, let's say around 8.2 rem. Yeah, let's give it a line height of 3 rems and a color. To the primary color. Nice. Next we need to style the paragraph. So we need to style these paragraph here. So let's do that in the story section. So what we'll do is on the story, we say story. I want to target the P tag within our story, right? So to do that, we'll set the font size to 1.8 rem. We set the padding to 0, top and bottom, 2, left and right. We'll align the text to center. So the text align center. Do a line height 3.5 rem. Margin top to 4 rem. Let's see what that looks like. All right. We could add more text here. So the line height here could probably be, let's try 4 and see. Yeah, give and take. Yeah, I think that's okay. So the next section that we'll be building is this menu section that says chef's pick menu. So we'll have a bunch of menu items and prices. So it have a picture, the title, the description, and the prices for each item, right? We also have an image on the right side, and we have a call to action that says see the menu here. So we'll start out by creating the HTML for this section. So we'll create a section tag, and we'll call it chef's pick. And we need to create a left side and a right side like what we did previously. Then within the left side, we need to have this heading here and these menu items. So let's go ahead and create it. So we'll have a heading H1 says chef's pick, and a H2 that says menu. Then underneath that, we need to create the menu items. So we'll create a div with a class called menu items, and then within this div we'll have each menu item. So then we need another class called menu item. Each menu item will have a photo, they will also have information section, and within the information section we'll have the menu title, so we'll create a div with a class called menu title, and then we'll create a H3 with a class called menu name, and the first one is the marinated grilled shrimp, and within the title we also have the price, which we're going to hold in a paragraph tag with a class called price. I will also have a description. So outside of the menu title, just below it, we'll create a paragraph with a class called description. Let's give it lorem 15, I guess. Let's work with that for now. We also need to add the photo. So we'll go up here and we'll add the image, and it will be in assets, images, and shrimp. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, so we have the image, and we have the title, the price, and the description. So we need to add a few of these. So let's go ahead and add the others. So menu item. So where you see menu item here, let's copy this, let's say around 3 more times. So menu item, sorry. Copy that 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll change the heading for each. So this is the first one. So the second one is going to be avocado, sweet and spicy chicken, French salad. Let's move that to. Alright, so let's add those. So this one is going to be avocado and mango salsa, $15. The image is mango salsa. This is going to be sweet and spicy chicken. $18. And the image for this one, chicken. And the last one is going to be French salad. Let's add the alt tag, French salad. Sweet and spicy chicken. All right. And then we need to set the price for this one. 14.88. All right, let's take a look at that. So we have the different images and the description for each along with the prices, right? So now let's work on styling these. We'll go over to our CSS, create a section for chef pick, and right. So start out by targeting the section with the class of chef's pick. So let's go chef's pick. We'll give this section a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 88 rem. We'll give it a display of flex. I'll give it a background color of hashtag FFFAF8. Next, we'll target the left side. So we'll go chef's pick, left side. So that left, I'll give it a width of 75%. So we want the left side to take up 75% of the entire width. We'll give it a padding of 10 rem, top and bottom, and 0, left and right. We'll also set a flex direction of column and place the items center. Now let's style the menu items. So we'll go chef pick, menu items. We'll give it a width of 100%. Give it a padding of 0 and 15 rem. And we'll target a photo. And give the photo a width of 10 rem. We also need to target the chef pick, menu item, photo, and we need to target the image itself and give it a width of 10 rem. There we go. And as you see, some images have a different height. It's not square basically, like this one isn't square. So we can fix that by setting the aspect ratio. So let's set the aspect ratio to 1, and this will kind of force it to become a square. So you see, aspect ratio to 1. All right. We also want to make the image round, so we'll give it a border radius of 50%, so they become round. And we can also set the object fit to cover. Nice. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to center this heading here that says Chef's Pick menu. We need to center that. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll come here and we'll go Chef's Pick and we'll target the H1, and we'll also target the Chef's Pick H2, and we'll text align it center. Nice. We now need to finish styling each menu item, so let's work on that. So we'll scroll down here and then we'll select the menu items. So Chef's Pick menu item, we'll give it a display of flex, margin bottoms, of 2 rem, there we go. Then we'll select the info. So we'll say Chef's Pick, target the info, and for the info we want to give it a width of 100%. We also want to give it a padding left of 2 rem, we want to target the menu title, so we'll go menu title, I want to give that a width of 100%, give it a display also of flex. I want to justify the content, space between. There we go. Next, we're going to style the H3 and the paragraph within the menu title. So let's select the H3 and the paragraph. So we'll say Chef's Pick, or both of them will have the same style. So what we could do, instead of selecting them individually, we could just go font size 1.4 rem and font weight 400. Let's see what that did. Nice. Next thing we can style is the description. So let's work on that. So we'll go Chef's Pick, description. For the description, we'll give it a font size of 1.4 rem and a width of 75%. There we go. Let's work on the right side. So for the right side, we'll select it by going chef's pick, that right, I will give it a width of 25%, which is the remaining. We'll give it a background URL so we can put the background image. So this background image here, we need to put it there as well. So we'll go background URL. And we need to go back up into the assets folder, images, and the image is called food. And we also want to center it and no repeat. We'll also go ahead and set the background size to cover. All right. So from what we're seeing, the title and the paragraph need to be a bit bigger. So let's see how we can make that happen. So here, this should have been chef's pick menu title. So we needed to target the menu title here. And this should have been about, let's see, 3 rem, 30 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So that looks a little better. Then we also need to increase the size of this paragraph here. So we could set this to about 1.8. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Yeah. All right. So what we can move on to now is we can do similar to what we did up here by setting this overlay and give this some more contrast. We'll target the right side again. So we'll go chef's pick. We'll target the right side and we'll use the before selector. We'll give it a content of empty string, right? Then we'll give it a background color, RGBA. And we use black with 30% opacity. Then we'll give it a position of absolute. And because we're giving that a position of absolute, we have to give the parent a position of relative. And then we'll set the top to 0. Left to 0, and we can give it a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and let's see how that looks like. All right, next we need to do is to set the blend mode. So we'll say mix blend mode to overlay. There we go. The last thing we need to add here will be this button that says see the menu. So it's the same button that we have used up here, so we can just copy that and paste it. So we'll copy that and paste it just above closing tag for the div with the class of left. So paste that there. Here it is. So I believe we left out something because this should be centered. So let's check on the left, chef's pick, left. Oh, yeah, we left out the display flex. There we go. So that concludes it for the chef menu section. So we'll now be moving on to the reservation section. Okay, so we are now on to the reservation section, which is this section. So here we have a left and a right separation as well, where on the left side we have a image grid, or some persons call it masonry, and on the right side we have a reservation form that person would fill out and then submit it to book their table. So this is the section that we're going to work on now. So we'll now go ahead and create a section with a class of reservation. And within that class, we'll have a left side and a right side. The left side will hold the images, so we can go ahead and create a wrapper for our images. So we'll call it photo wrapper. We can call it image wrapper, whichever works. So the photo wrapper, and then within this wrapper we'll create the image tags, right? Image will be in our assets folder, images, and then we have res photo 1. Let's go reservation food 1. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and then we'll put this to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's see if we 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We needed to change these as well. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. These are our images. Next, we need to create the HTML for our form on the right side. So we'll have a heading section, a form, and a button. So on the right side, we'll have a H1 that says reservation, a H2 that says book online. We'll create a container for our form, or let's create the form. So it's a form, give it a class of form container. Container. We're not going to do any submission of form in this tutorial, so I'll just remove that. And let's build out our form inputs. So create a row, and we'll create some columns. So within this column, we'll put a input, of type text with a placeholder of name. We'll create another column. I'll put another input, type email, a placeholder of email, and that's the first row. We'll copy this and create another row and this row will have the phone number and the amount. So we'll say phone number, and we'll say amount. We'll give this number, and then we'll have another row and this row will have our reservation date, which is a date type, and we'll have time. And then the last row we'll have a column. Within that column we'll have a button that says book your table. And let's see how that looks. Alright, so we have all the HTML elements that we need. We just need to create the CSS styling for it now. So let's go ahead and create the style. So we'll go over to our CSS, and then from our CSS we'll create a section for reservation. So we'll say reservation and then end reservation. So let's start out by targeting our reservation section. So reservation, let's give it a width of 100%, minimum height of 83 rems, and let's do a display flex. Nice. I think we could put a margin top as well. Let's do a margin top of maybe 3 rems. Let's see what that does. Yeah, let's work with that for now. We'll adjust as needed. Now the next thing we're going to do is to style the left side. So let's style the left side. So the reservation left side, and the left side we want to give it a width of just 40%, and we want to give it a display of grid because we're going to align the images in grid format or using the grid. And then we want to place items center. Next we'll style the reservation left side photo wrapper. So we'll say left, I will get the photo wrapper, which is this should be form container, which is, sorry, I went too far, this here. So we'll style this. So what we'll do is we'll give it a width of 80%. We'll give it a height of 70 rem. We'll give it a margin of 5 rem top and bottom, 0 left and right. I will set the display to grid. I will give it a grid template columns of repeat 5 times 1 fraction. So 5 columns, 5 equal columns. I will want a grid template rows of 3 equal rows. So we'll say repeat 3 1 FR. We also want to set the gap between these to 0.5. So next, what we're going to be doing is to style each photo individually. So we want to place them. So we have a grid with 5 columns and 3 rows. And what we want to do now is to place these on the grids, right? We'll target each photo individually. So we'll say reservation left. I want the photo. So these should have a class for us to target them. So let's add the class. So this should be class photo 1. This is 2. This is 3. 4. 5. 6. So now let's go ahead and place these on the grid. So we'll target photo 1. And we'll give it a grid column. Starting at line 1 and end at line 4. And grid row. Start 1 and 2. So start at grid line 1, grid row line 1 and end at grid row line 2. So the next one will be photo 2. Which should be starting at 4, column 9, 4, 6, and still 1, 2. Let's go to photo 3. And this will start at column line 1, end at 3. I will start at row line 2 and end at 3. And let's go to photo 4. And this will be 3, 6. And then we have 2 more, which is 5 and 6. So 5, 6. And then for 5, it will be starting at column 1 to 4. And row line 3 to 4. And this one will be from 4 to 6. And this one will be 3 to 4. We needed to also style the image tag itself. So we'll give it a height of 100%. We could set the aspect ratio here, but we can also go and say width 100%. We could have just placed an aspect ratio of 1, it would be the same, but many ways to solve the same thing, right? So let's do an object fit here of cover. Let's see if that's right. So there you go, we have our image set up. So now let's style the right side that has our form. So to do that, We'll select the reservation right side. We'll give it a width of 60%. We'll give it a display of flex. We'll place the items center. So we can use place item center or justify content and align item center. Place item center just gives us a one line to achieve the same thing. So whichever you prefer. We can set the flex direction to column and give it a top padding of 15 rem. There we go. Next, we need to style the form itself. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll select the form container. Which is this here. And then we'll target the row. So for the row, I want to give it a display of flex. And then we need to target the column inside the row. So we'll go form container, row, column. I want to set flex 1, 0, 0. We'll give it a padding of 0.5 rem. Next, we'll target the input. So we'll go form container, we get the row, we get the column, we get the input. And what we want to do is we want to set the width of the input field to 100%. We want to give it a border of 1 pixel, solid. And then we can use a RGBA for this one. Let's give it 2% opacity. And we also want to give it a height of 4 rem. And also a padding left of 0.8 rem. Next thing we need to style is the button that says book your table. So let's work on that. So let's select it. So we'll go form container and get the button. We'll give that a width of 100%. We'll give it also a height. Let's use 5 rem for the height. And the background color, we need to set the background color to our primary color. And we need to set the text to white. So we use color white. Give it a font size of 2.5 rem. Set the text to uppercase. So text transform, uppercase. I want to make the font bold, so we'll give it a font weight of bold. I want to align the text to center and give it a cursor of pointer. Nice. We could also give it a hover effect. So we'll go form container, button, and select the hover state and give it a background color change. So we can go background color. I will change that to the primary dark. So we're almost complete with the reservation section. Let's do a comparison. So we could make this form a little bit more bigger, give it more margin, and then that would complete it. So let's work on that. So as you can see here, this is a little bit small, so we can work on the sizing for that. So let's do that. Let's come to the form container, give it a width of 100%, or maybe 90%. Let's use 90. And then for the input itself, let's give this a height of 6 rem for each input field. Then we need to increase the font for this, and we need to increase the height for this, and we need to put some margins underneath the input field or the rows. So let's do that. So for the row, let's give it a margin of 2 rem, which will give it some space between each. And then for the input itself, let's give it a font size of 2 rem as well, so we can increase the font. Then the next thing we need to do is to increase the size of this button here. So let's do that. So the button, can add 2 more rems on it. And the last thing we need to do is to add a right margin between these elements here. So let's do that. There we go. And that concludes the reservation section. So the final section that we have is the footer, which is really simple. It just has the logo, some social media icons, and a copyright section. Let's do that real quick. Let's start working on the HTML for the footer. To start off the footer, we'll need some icons, and these icons were taken from Font Awesome. So let's go over to Font Awesome. So we'll just go to the CDN and copy the link. And then we'll go back to our HTML and paste it in our head section. Now we can create our footer. So scroll all the way down to the end and create a section called footer. Within this section, we'll create a div with a class of logo, and within that div, we'll have an image which will come from assets, images, logo, PNG. So call this logo. And then we'll create a social media link. So we'll create a div with a class called social media. And then we'll have some anchor tags for each link, right? So within each link, we'll add this social media icon from Font Awesome. So we'll create an I tag. So it'll be I, and with a class of FAB, FA, Facebook, -F for the Facebook icon. You can duplicate this 4 times, or 3 more times, sorry, and then change the icons. So the next icon is going to be Twitter. So the next one is going to be LinkedIn. And the final one is going to be Instagram. And the last line would be your copyright. So you could put a copyright here. Let's take a look at that. So here's our footer information here. So all we need to do now is to style it. So let's work on styling the footer. So create a new section here, or a new comment, call it footer. And let's begin to style it. So say footer, we'll give it a width of 100%. Give it a height of 30 rem. Give it a background color of primary. I believe we use the primary dark for this one. Let's take a look at the design real quick. Yes, primary dark. Let's give it a display of flex, so we can work on aligning all the items. We'll give it a flex direction of column. We'll justify the content center and align items center as well. And as I said, we could use place item center for this, just a matter of preference. Next, let's see what's happening. So we have everything centered. So next we'll go ahead and style the logo and the icons. So let's style the icons first, and then we'll come back to the logo. So we'll say footer. So we'll select the footer, and then we'll select the icons within the footer. I'll give them a font size of 5 rem. We'll give each of them a margin right of 2 rem. Also give it a color of primary. I will give them a margin bottom of 2 rems. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Nice. I think we're missing a icon. Let's see which icon is missing. We're missing the Instagram icon. So this should be Instagram. There we go. So next we can work on styling the copyright. It should be copyright. RIGHT. Alright. So to style the copyright section, all we'll do is target the footer, p tag, give it a font size of 2 rems, give it a color of white, give it some letter spacing of 0.5 rems. Nice. So we'll go footer, we'll target the logo, give it a margin bottom of about 2 rems. Next we can target this here, the social media class. So we can go footer, social media, and give it 2 rems margin bottom as well. So we can just join it to the logo, since that's the only thing that we're adding to both. Just put a comma and do this, and there we go. This could have some margin as well. Let's see if 2 rem works. Let's give the logo a margin top of 2 rems. Something is off. There we go. So this could be a little bit bigger. We're almost at the end of this tutorial. We just have a few minor cleanups to make. We need to add some paddings to the left and the right of this main navigation. We also need to get the price to become bold, as that was in the design. And finally, we need to add some grid gaps between these images. So let's go ahead and work on that. For the main nav, we can just add 15 rem to the left and the right. You see there. For the price, we need to set the font weight, instead of 400, set it to bold. And I didn't realize that we had this selector duplicated, so we can consolidate it into one and remove this one. And then for the reservation, we had a gap here, but we didn't set the unit, so this should be 0.5 rem. And let's take a look at the changes. So the price is now bold, and for the reservation we have the gap between the images. So that's it. If you enjoyed this tutorial, go ahead and leave a like and share the video. If you have any questions or feedback, drop them in the comment section. If you want to see more contents like this, subscribe and turn on your notification bell. Until next time, stay safe and happy coding.